Welcome to the International Leadership Conference, the ILC, sponsored by the Universal Peace Federation. I'm Cindy Pfeiffer with the Washington Times Foundation Women in Leadership. First of all, our emphasis has been on the peaceful unification of the Korean Peninsula, and it shows a pattern of how to work worldwide. So we will now offer a video presentation titled The Work of the Universal Peace Federation, also showcasing the many rallies of hope we had during the pandemic. So please enjoy the video.
Today, the world is battling with a global pandemic and fears over long-term environmental damage. National lockdowns have seen an increase in isolation and a growing sense of hopelessness. To address this crisis, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon and the Universal Peace Federation initiated an ambitious online program called Rally of Hope, which provides an opportunity for current and former heads of state and government, leading politicians, religious leaders, and Nobel laureates to present their vision for a peaceful and sustainable world. As the rallies have grown, so have their audiences, and they now link millions of people across the globe.
Building partnership across a wide range of sectors is imperative if we are to build a better world. I believe that the Universal Peace Federation and its broad set of partnerships serve as a good model.
I'm honored to address you at this global rally of hope, sponsored by the Universal Peace Federation, and join you in the great cause of building a more peaceful and prosperous world. During my 4 years as Vice President, at home and abroad, I've seen firsthand that strong families, education, equal treatment under the law, and a recognition of the dignity and worth of every human life is the foundation of true national greatness. With free people, strong nations, and bold leaders, there's no limit to what we can achieve.
These rallies have created a foundation inviting international and interreligious collaboration in the achievement of peace among our nations. We can transcend the barriers we have created through religion, nationality, cultures, class, creed, and other differences that divide us.
35 years ago, the situation that confronted us in South Africa appeared to be hopeless. We were increasingly isolated, without friends or allies in the world. However, we finally made it to our first fully inclusive elections on 27 April 1994, to the inauguration of President Mandela, and to the adoption of a truly inclusive and democratic constitution. But above all, we have learned the importance of never losing hope.
The upliftment of the common good over and above personal interests is a sure way to eliminating conflict and a pathway to attaining peaceful growth and development in Africa and the world.
We must recognize that history shows that the rights and freedoms of ordinary people are critical to creating and sustaining our prosperity and peace over time. If there is any organization capable of convening a truly global network of people to genuinely shared efforts, then it is this one, the Universal Peace Federation.
The issues being taken up in this rally are indeed critical to the challenges of our time and need to be accorded the highest priority. It is important for us to address them so that this collective effort will reinforce attention on these concerns.
Let us promote a culture of peace and harmony around the world. Let us work to heal the broken trust that has fractured societies. Let us encourage facts and truth instead of hatred and bigotry. Let's also instill a sense of hope and future in our youth.
Back in September 2010, it was, for me as the then Prime Minister, and for my compatriots, such an unforgettable experience to host a delegation of the Universal Peace Federation and of the world-class Little Angel Children's Dance Troupe and Choir in Brussels. Your work is important, your work is crucial, your work is the pathway to a better future, a beacon of hope in these darkest times.
We still have a very long way to go before every child in every part of the world has enough to eat. But the Republic of Korea's story gives me hope for the future. WP started working in the country way back in 1964 in the aftermath of the Korean War, and for 20 years we supported the Korean people with food assistance. And during this period, the country, the people, rebuilt itself from the ground up. In just one generation, the Republic of Korea went from aid recipient to aid donor.
It was important to us that we were making a vaccine for the world and that it should be made widely available with no profit during the pandemic or at any time for vaccine used in low and middle income countries. AstraZeneca shared our vision. This vaccine was made for all of us to protect each other and ourselves.
When I had the honor to receive on behalf of the European Union the Nobel Peace Prize in 2012 in Oslo, I had the occasion to underline the very close link between peace and also the values we have in a society. A society at all levels, starting with the family. That is our most basic community.
There is one word that has great meaning to us all, and that is the word family. Family is the root of everything we are. Family is what binds us together, and family is the cornerstone of world peace.
많은 종교들이 있습니다. 절대자,
And all these faiths have one purpose. Hence, I sincerely hope that you will let all people know about our Creator and work to realize a world of peace wherein all people live in unity as one family of humankind, one great family under our Heavenly Parent. Please raise your voices and work together for this. I give you my blessing.
What Mother Moon has done in carrying on the work of her husband, in building a worldwide movement committed to the concept that we can find ways to talk with each other, we can find ways to work together, is the key to a successful future. And so I think you taking your time to be involved in this meeting is really important.
More rallies of hope are planned in the coming months, featuring significant world leaders and luminaries. As viewer numbers continue to increase, this forum offers a great chance to inspire and connect people through its twin messages of hope and peace.
Thank you very much for that. And we'd now like to have our first speaker come. It's Dr. Thomas Walsh, Chairman of the Universal Peace Federation International. So welcome, Dr. Walsh.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Pfeiffer, and for Dr. Jenkins for organizing not only this program, but I've been attending so many of your programs this year, and you're just doing a remarkable job, and it's making enormous impact, as evidenced in that wonderful video that was just shown. I've seen it several times, but each time I see it, I'm encouraged and uplifted. I believe that our UPF movement is expanding, growing. The brand is more widely known and appreciated. And this opens opportunities for us to make what we believe is very important and positive impact on our world. The theme for your ILC, along with those being carried out in other regions of the world, is focused around building a base for unification or reunification on the Korean Peninsula, which is a big challenge. And on the one hand, it's a narrow focus. It's kind of one nation in one part of the world. And yet condensed within that somewhat narrow focus is a kind of core of our global problems. To some extent, the Korean Peninsula is now a very central part of this new emerging, what some call a new Cold War or Cold War II, this tension between China and the United States that is not just about trade or competition for geopolitical advantages, but it represents in many ways two very different paradigms for organizing the world or thinking about the world and thinking about how nation states understand themselves. At stake is the very future of liberal democracy as it has been known, certainly since the origin of the United States and prior with foundations in Europe. And some are speaking about that system being clearly in a difficult situation and perhaps in decline, whereas it is argued that perhaps the Chinese model, or what may be described as more authoritarian forms of democracy that combine a certain kind of political authoritarianism together with the mechanisms of a capitalist system that allows for economic development, combined with a stricter and more controlling single-party communist system. So the dynamics are there also encapsulated in Korea. So we very much see the challenge of trying to break through in Korea as having not just local implications, and not even just Northeast Asian implications, but global implications. And it provides a kind of test case, if you will, for UPF to apply its own approach to peace, our core principles and restorative practices that I know today's discussion and over the next couple of days will focus on issues of ideology and worldview on the one hand, together with issues of economic development, trade, and commerce as instruments of peace. UPF's approach is in some ways very simple. Try to bring people together, convene, conference, but not simply for the sake of conference, but bringing people together in dialogue. Something can happen. It's an opportunity for growth and development. We often use the term give and take action. Convening people opens the opportunity for give and take action, and the base of that is dialogue, how we talk together, speak to one another, and we listen to one another. We learn, we gradually develop deeper understandings. This contributes to respect, mutual respect, and cooperation. Our programs, as we saw the Rally of Hope series that began kind of out of the crisis of COVID, but it's had tremendous impact globally. We've had this World Summit series. We're planning a summit soon at the end of this year that addresses the Korean Peninsula crisis. We are working closely with the government of Cambodia on that initiative. Cambodia is a nation with an embassy in Pyongyang and relationships. So we're looking for ways to expand that realm of convening, of bringing people together for dialogue, looking for opportunities to find common ground and overlapping consensus that can serve as a step toward further dialogue, building trust, building confidence. One of the pillars of our work is known as Think Tank 2022. It's a kind of virtual think tank. It now has about 2,000 experts from all fields, just as UPF is structured around various associations that involve the sectors from the government sector, the faith-based organization sector, the non-governmental organization sector, the private sector, or also called the business sector, along with academia, the media, working with women leaders. We need to apply all these instruments or tools to the effort to promote dialogue and peace. And Think Tank 2022 also has that multi-sectoral approach. We are building expert working groups with specialized areas of focus in economic development, for example, or looking at the core kind of theoretical, philosophical, ideological kind of worldview factors that are brought to bear here that help us understand one another and even find some kind of common language, because sometimes languages, just like different languages of Spanish and Russian, you need translation, but even conceptual frameworks need to somehow learn from one another so that they can find common language to move forward. So I want to underscore this point of the Think Tank 2022 as it's unfolding, and one of the exciting initiatives there is a forum series that will bring together leading experts to address issues related to the Korean Peninsula, and in a venue that has commentators and a dialogue with the audience to who can ask questions. And I think this is going to be an exciting new component of our work as we build a broad portfolio of programs that can come at these issues from a variety of angles. And indeed, the area of economic trade and commerce has always been recognized as not just about financial benefit, but in the process of economic engagement, trade and commerce, we also interact with one another. It's a form of soft power approach to peace, one could say. There's a dimension of trade and commerce. So how can we, through a Korea-Japan tunnel or through the development and discussion with our colleagues in Russia, in Vladivostok, the Tumen River Economic Development Program, or working with people of Korean descent who live in Russia or China, and building on these foundations to promote economic opportunities. It's not easy by any means. This is an issue that has underlying deep resentments, deep and radical divergent narratives about how all this came about. Very hard to break through those hardened narrative systems and find some common ground. But that is our commitment and our work. And Think Tank 2022 will be very important in that effort, this ILC series. I think this particular, which is the third in this kind of triptych of ILCs that started with peace and security, moved into the track 2 diplomatic efforts, and now moves into this area of the economic development aspect of peace building, as well as understanding ideas and theory and worldview and ideology, and how that comes to bear, and how better understanding of that aspect can help us communicate better with each other and hopefully make small steps, but significant steps toward unification of the Korean Peninsula. A lot more I'd like to say, but I'm going to stop there, Dr. Jenkins and Cindy, And thank you. I'm very happy to be part of this program. I look forward to hearing the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's a powerhouse of knowledge. We're grateful for it. Our next presenter is Dr. Chung Yong. He's president of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification of North America. So we would like to welcome Dr. Yong. He pre-recorded this for us. It looks like it's not coming in so well. Dr. Jenkins, would you like to go ahead with your presentation, or shall we try one more with that one?
The video is not running.
Distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply honored to participate in this International Leadership Conference sponsored by the Universal Peace Federation of North America. The theme of our conference is towards peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula, connecting the world's economics, perspectives, and geography. Throughout the conference, we will examine the effectiveness of nations cooperating to build bridges physically, economically, and ideologically. In particular, the conference will look at the development of international tunnels between Japan and Korea and US and Russia. These tunnels represent more than just a physical connection between countries. They also represent overcoming ideological boundaries and differences, which is an absolutely necessary approach when working toward establishing peace in the world. The conference will also consider how to bridge the gaps between worldviews of different nations and prospects of an Asian Economic Union, which would foster teamwork amongst the Northeast Asian region. Leading experts from all of the region will share their knowledge and experience. The more we dialogue together to find solutions, the quicker we will see our desired goal of peace in Northeast Asia come to fruition. The situation in Northeast Asia region is still urgent, particularly the long-standing division between North and South Korea is an ongoing and growing concern. The long battle between communism and the God-affirming democracies of the world have now come to the last battlefield of struggle. It is time for the world to stand up strongly in the name of peace, cooperation, and prosperity for all. I want to thank Dr. Hak-Chan Moon, the co-founder of UPF, and her late husband, Dr. Sun Myung Moon, for their vision and leadership in this area. Through their effort, UPF has brought together world leaders from every sector of the society, heads of the state, government, and parliament, business, media, arts, and academia, and faith leaders to establish a network of ambassadors for peace who are actively looking for ways to bring about a peaceful world. Father and Mother Moon always emphasize the need to understand God as our heavenly parents and the importance of the practicing true love, compassion, and living for the sake of others. If all of our world leaders can adopt this type of thinking, surely peace can come about much more quickly. If we attend God as our heavenly parents, the inspiration and clear next steps to reconcile enemy nations can be found. I encourage all of our leaders attending this week's International Leadership Conference to consider the importance of putting aside our differences and working together as one global united family. I want to congratulate UPF International Chairman Dr. Thomas Walsh and UPF International President Dr. Michael Jenkins for their outstanding leadership and development of this timely conference. I also want to express my thanks to Honorable Dan Button, the Global Co-Chairman of the International Association of Parliamentarians for Peace, IAPD, and Honorable John Doolittle, the Chairman of IAPD in North America, for their tireless work to make this effort a great success. I congratulate Dr. Hak Jahan Moon for her outstanding leadership and bringing dialogue and understanding that will positively contribute to the realization of peaceful reunification of North and South Korea and peace in Northeast Asia and throughout the world. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much for that timely message. Our final presenter of this session is Dr. Michael Jenkins, President of the Universal Peace Federation International. So we're happy to welcome Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you, Ms. Pfeiffer, and thank you especially to our chairman, Dr. Thomas Walsh, for really leading this effort to build a global network of parliamentarians, heads of state, faith leaders, business, academic, and also leaders in all fields of culture and arts. We're honored to have this ILC, International Leadership Conference. Our focus is on connecting the world's economies, perspectives, and geography. We're going to hear presentations today by experts, but unlike our earlier ILC programs that focused on diplomacy and a lot of the issues related with North and South Korea reunification, bringing peace between nations, we're going to take a little different focus here because we're going to look at business and how business can help or hurt bringing nations together, particularly in the Northeast Asia and also with the North and South Korea. We're going to look also at practical projects that UPF is supporting, like building an undersea tunnel between Japan and Korea, as well as a tunnel and possibly a bridge between the Bering Strait to open up that door. To do that, we need friendship between Russia and the United States and other countries. We're also going to take a look at the worldviews that cause us to have divergent views of governance and how we might be able to better improve the lives of our people. And how can we come up with a common set of understanding and values that the UPF promotes, which is we really promote interdependence and also mutual prosperity for all, as well as commonly shared values. And you're going to be hearing that today. I want to thank you for joining us. Each session is like an individual conference, so please join as many as you can, and we're going to go right into our next session. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Thank you, Dr. Yong, for your presentation, and thank you to the Universal Peace Federation.
Thank you so much. Our next session that will start at 2 Eastern Standard Time is titled Perspectives of North and South Korean Unification. So have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to session 2 of our International Leadership Conference. My name is Ray Lipowcan, and I'll be our moderator for today. And today's session is titled Perspectives on North and South Korean Reunification. And we have 3 excellent speakers today who are very, very accomplished in their fields. And afterwards, we'll have a question and answer session. Before I introduce or invite our first speaker, Dr. Yi, I'd like to read his bio. Dr. Joseph Yi is Associate Professor of Political Science at Hanyang University in Seoul, Korea. Dr. Yi received a BA at UC Berkeley and a PhD in Political Science at the University of Chicago. Dr. Yi researches on diversity, civil society, and liberal democracy, especially in North America and East Asia. Since 2013, Dr. Yi published 10 articles in SSCI Index journals. In 2016, Dr. Yi was selected as one of the top 23 excellent researchers at Hanyang University, one of only 2 professors from the social science department. Welcome, Dr. Yi.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yes, do you want me to present first or do we go in order? Oh, yes. Sure. Sorry about that. I thought it was going to be third. Okay, then let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to share my sound. Okay. Thank you for that great introduction. Again, my name is Professor Joseph Yi, and I'm sharing my presentation on faith-based organizations in North Korea. This is from a journal article that I recently submitted. It's the Parable of Talents. And so, okay, now let's go on. So my question is, how did members of NK-oriented faith-based organizations, FBOs, respond to restrictions linked to the 2017-18 sanctions and the recent global pandemic? Okay, and so this is a 3-year study of US humanitarian evangelicals. Now, before 2017, US citizens made up more than half of faith-based workers in the DPRK. This includes Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, the Pyongyang Spine Rehabilitation Center, and also North Korea's first surfing camp. You can click on the links. And then here's a short YouTube video of the North Korea's first surfing camp. Let me go to my screen. Okay.
And very unique in the history of the world, because now surfing is going to be introduced to your beautiful nation of DPRK, and so we want to say thank you.
Surfing started in Hawaii and it finished in DPRK, but nobody remembers the middle. Only the first place and the last place, right? We hope that surfing brings peace to Korea. So we're happy to be here, and thank you so much for joining us this week.
Right, we're getting a little surf photo before it all starts, before the fun begins.
Oh,
that face. That is usually
sorry, there was a commercial break. So, but I guess you gotta taste of the surfing in North Korea. Okay, now going back to my screen. Let me stop share. Okay. Okay, going back to my PPT. Okay, but the faith-based workers were hit with 2 major challenges. First was the governmental restrictions, the sanctions, including the GTR, geographical travel restriction. UN Security Resolution 2397, and the US North Korea sanctions regulations. And then in 2020, you had the pandemic-related border closures. And so I asked, how are humanitarian workers responding to this? And then I found out that the faith-based workers, the Christian workers, are responding. They're addressing two audiences. One is external and the other one is internal. So for the external audience, so right now Christians are split between what we call human rights versus humanitarian evangelicals. So the human rights evangelicals, they focus on the human rights violations in the DPRK. And they valorize, they honor, they sanctify the defector activists, North Korean defectors, as the true victims of the regime and as vanguards of future unification. And so here, North Korean migrants become subjectified as the chosen ones in the Christian community. On the other hand, humanitarian evangelicals, they narrate North Korean children and students as the true victims of sanctions, of international sanctions, and also government mismanagement of economic policies, and vanguards of future unification. And so, for example, they mentioned this 10-year-old girl named Yuen, she was disabled, she couldn't sit up or walk, she was quadriplegic, but then with a Hanyang Spine Rehabilitation Center, the first disabled center in North Korea, we were able to help her walk. She's now going to school and she wants to be a doctor someday in the future. And so people like Yuen and also the students at PUS, according to the president, PUS students are the most hardworking. They stay up all night and then they complete their homework. It's every teacher's dream, right? And so, these young children, these hardworking students, they represent the future of North Korea. They are the true vanguards of unification. And so we need to do all we can to improve their life chances. And that means maybe modify some of the sanctions. So that is external audience. But then there's also another debate internally, because many humanitarian evangelicals are debating, what does the sanctions and pandemic mean? Does this mean that God is closing the doors on North Korea? Does God want me to go elsewhere? And so, after the sanctions hit, some of the faith-based workers, they shifted to other mission fields, such as Vietnam. And they see themselves as latter-day Moses. So for example, here, I can't help but to think about Moses as he was not allowed to enter into the promised land, Deuteronomy 32:5-2. But then the people who want to stay, they say, this is not a Moses moment. This is actually a parable of talents moment to prepare for God's special plan for North Korea. And so according to, Mr. and Mrs. Yoon, who they're the founders of the Disabled Center in North Korea, they say, like many of us, and after the travel ban, after the pandemic, border closures, they relocated from North Korea to United States and then back to South Korea in Quebec, where they're doing like a language and cultural training center to prepare future workers for the future opening of North Korea. And so right now, we may be tempted to feel that we're frozen in a waiting period, but just like in the parable of talents, even though we're waiting for our master to return or for doors to reopen, we're not waiting. We're called to invest our talents as we actively wait for opportunities to arise, doubling, tripling, or even quadrupling that which have been given us, whether that be in language acquisition, cultural understanding, or professional development. Today is a precious gift as we look forward to witnessing how our Father will work in the midst of all these circumstances. Okay, right. In terms of the academic literature, I discussed the dual relationship that evangelicals had with people who are outgroups, with people who are different from themselves. Evangelicals, Christians, either see them as a potential threat, they create symbolic boundaries. But then the second approach is that the the only real way to change the world, to change other people, is through interpersonal relationships. So we need to go to whether they're LGBT, North Koreans, Chinese communists. We need to go there, make friends, get to know people one by one. And that is the only true way to change the world. Okay. And so in terms of my US policy implications, I think faith-based organizations have a lot to offer. They spent many years inside North Korea, creating a civil society, trying to connect North Koreans with the outside world. And so there will be a valuable resource to the Biden administration as it considers whether to renew the travel ban in September 2021. And also on a more larger note, I think most Koreans are very grateful to the United States for the United States 70-year plus commitment to the liberty of the Korean Peninsula. I want to share my prayer for the people of Afghanistan. And I think Afghanistan shows that it takes a really long time, tremendous time and resources to really develop like a functioning liberal democracy. I know like with American aid, it took from like 1945 to 1990s until we had our first real free democratic elections and a change of government. And so it took South Korea more than 50 years. And so I'm very grateful to the Americans for the more than 50, for committing to Korea for more than 50 years, to protect liberty in the Korean Peninsula. And then I feel it's very sad that Afghanistan did not have the same opportunity. I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Yi. A lot of times we talk about parliamentarian perspectives or business economic perspectives, but I'm grateful you talked about faith-based perspectives. And I'm particularly happy that you talked about the students' participation. Yeah, because the students, of course, have a voice. As you said, those are the future leaders of South Korea. So I'm grateful that you brought them up. And it was nice to see that surfing can also be an inroad also to peace. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Right.
We'll be having a question and answer session later, so we look forward to hearing more from you. A lot of times we see in the world the tension between neighbors so much, particularly when we're talking about Northeast Asia, tension between the Koreas and Russia, China, Japan. And being an American, I am so grateful that we have such wonderful neighbors to our north in Canada. And our next speaker happens to be the chairman of the Universal Peace Federation of Canada, Dr. Moonshik Kim. And before I invite Dr. Kim to speak, I'd like to read his short bio. Dr. Moonshik Kim earned a master's degree in Western history from Konkuk University in Korea and a doctor of ministry from the Unification Theological Seminary in New York. He was also awarded an honorary doctorate from Sun Moon University in Korea. He's held various positions in the Unification movement since 1988 in Korea, the USA, and Canada. In Korea, Dr. Kim served on the Central Committee of the Universal Peace Federation from 2006 to 2008. He served as Vice President of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in the USA in 2008 to 2013. And he was appointed as National Chairman of both the Family Federation and the Universal Peace Federation in Canada. He is married with 4 children. Welcome, my neighbor, Dr. Kim.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon. Today I'm going to give a brief introduction concerning the question of North and South Korea reunification. Due to time limitation, I will only introduce some important things to consider. North and South Korea both are wishing for unification. Then why is it so difficult? Firstly, it is because of different ideologies, worldviews, and political systems. As we know, North Korea has a very unique ideology, Kim Il-sung Juche ideology, which is a kind of modified communist ideology centered on idolization of Kim Il-sung. In many places of North Korea, people can find the Yong top in Korean, which means towers of eternal life. On each of them, it is written, the great leader comrade Kim Il-sung and the great leader comrade Kim Jong-il are with us eternally.
North Korea doesn't allow the religion, but Kim Il-sung is like in the position of semi-god. The conclusion of Kim Il-sung Juche ideology is the absolute dynasty of Kim Il-sung. In the preamble of North Korea's constitution, we can find Kim Il-sung's name 22 times and Kim Jong-il's name 17 times. More importantly, the constitution proclaims North Korea as a nuclear state. If North Korea wants to show sincerity for denuclearization, this statement should be removed first from the constitution. Pyongyang was once called the Jerusalem of the East. The church that started the dawn prayer gathering and the revival movement in Pyongyang was the very Jangdaehyun church. Now, the church is gone, and Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il's gigantic statues replaced the church on the spot with Kumsusan Palace. Since the division of Korea, many North Korean people grew up with the daily education of Juche ideology and communist ideology for more than half century in such a closed society. Our founders were very much concerned about this point and invested an astronomical amount of resources to educate people in Korea and the world from 1970s. Reverend Moon even warned many times that in the future, there could be a general election of all Korean citizens as the method of unification. So he invested massively to educate people about the communism. When Reverend Moon visited North Korea in 1991, you can see the picture here. He proclaimed publicly at North Korea Assembly Hall that the communist ideology and Juche ideology cannot bring unification of North and South Korea. In the 1980s, so many college university students were influenced by Marx-Leninism. Once a person falls into an ideology or philosophy, it influences that person for their lifetime. Those students from the 80s now occupy many important positions in politics, media, education, etc. In the 80s, there were two major groups of student movement, NL, National Liberation, and PD, People's Democracy. The basic characteristic of NL was that it was pro-North Korea and anti-USA. The PD movement focused more on class strife. Many important positions of the current Korean government are held by the people from this NL movement. The previous chief of staff of President Moon Jae-in was the president of this NL movement in the 80s. That is the main reason that current government is more pro-China and anti-America and has not been cooperating well with the USA policies such as SAT, GSOMIA, Wartime Operational Control Authority, etc. Many young people in Korea grew up under the education and influence of this student movement group. Their textbooks and teachers are from this left-wing generation. That's why today many young people in Korea tend to be anti-American and anti-Japan. In today's Korea, different forms of communist ideology are introduced, and our young people study freely without any restriction in a more open environment and atmosphere. So tackling this wrong ideology and worldview should be a consistent effort before and even after unification. But I'd like to remember what our founders said. The purpose of the victory over communism movement is not to kill communists, but to liberate and save them with truth and true love. If we look at the case of the unification of Germany, as the citizens in Eastern and Western Germany agreed, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany owes a great debt to Mikhail Gorbachev's reform policy of glasnost and perestroika. And the majority of people in East Germany were longing for a good life, like the people in the West Germany. Just as Gorbachev did not block the destruction of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany based on his reform policy, the international society centering on USA should create the environment that China's policy reform to the direction of supporting the unification of North and South Korea. China's support for the unification of North and South Korea can be the key to the unification of North and South Korea. In addition, if North Korean people can understand the terribly poor condition of North Korea and have the will and desire to lead a good life of freedom and economic prosperity, this can bring about unification faster. People in North Korea don't have freedom to choose their job or occupation. Rather, the Workers' Party of Korea and administration institutions assign and control everything. In North Korea, there is no freedom of residential mobility. Once this is permitted, this means that information can go around, and North Korea regime is afraid of this. The Kim Il-sung dynasty keeps suppressing and controlling 25 million North Korean people to maintain its own regime. Once North Korea people see the reality of the outside world and understand how miserable North Korea's situation is, North Korea will collapse very quickly. I believe that the Korean government needs to cooperate with the UN-USA lead sanction policy concerning North Korea and China. However, as long as North Korea's leadership considers nuclear weapons the sole means to guarantee its survival, it is also possible that more sanctions can result in even more nuclear and missile tests. Furthermore, even if North Korea can be convinced to come to the negotiating table, it is unreasonable to assume that the leadership will completely give up their nuclear ambitions. So, as the track to strategy, the communication and efforts to make a relationship with North Korea on the NGO level should be continued, especially when these two governments are in a very stormy relationship. The NGO's role can be more effective and powerful to open the door of North Korea. Our co-founder, Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, mentioned that the Korean government should ally with the worldwide foundation of Reverend and Mrs. Moon's lifetime efforts. Then Korea will become a powerful nation of diplomacy. Another route we should seriously consider is the use of soft power. We should mobilize all possible ways to let North Korean people be aware of the Korean wave Hallyu, which is spreading like a wildfire in the world. South Korean cultural products flow into North Korea from China as contraband goods and are traded in private markets known as 장마당. Hallyu is moving faster in North Korea these days because the development of digital media makes it easier to avoid crackdowns through NGOs, aid groups, and foreign journalists. Now North Korean people can more easily access them wherever they are. Hallyu has become so prevalent in North Korea that many regulators themselves enjoy South Korean pop culture. North Korean people will see the outside world and discover new aspects of their neighbors. As proven elsewhere, attractiveness of Hallyu is bringing a change in the mind of the people in the North. The intangible aspect of Hallyu has begun to bring the North and South closer than ever before. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim, for your perspective. As you had mentioned, we can see the challenges facing reunification because of the deep entrenchment of the Juche ideology in North Korea, plus, as you had mentioned, the Marxism forums at the universities in South Korea as well. But I'm glad you mentioned about the World Summit in 2020 because education really is a key for both North and South Korea, and the World Summit was a good venue to bring that education process forward. So again, we'll look forward to some more comments from you at the question and answer at the end. An expression that's sometimes used, we hear is it's used, they say, putting boots on the ground. And what that means is, of course, you can't make decisions from satellite photographs, but you have to really be there face to face on the front line. And our first two speakers definitely had their boots on the ground. And particularly our third speaker, Dr. Thomas Ward, has visited Korea over 100 times, and he's been in North Korea a couple of times. So before I invite Dr. Ward to speak, I'd like to read his bio. Dr. Thomas Ward is President and Professor of Peace and Development at the Unification Theological Seminary. Over the course of his career, Dr. Ward traveled between the United States and South Korea more than 100 times, and he has visited North Korea twice, where he met with the Democratic People's Republic of Korea officials, including North Korea's founder, leader Kim Il-sung. In 1992, Dr. Ward played a significant role in an important Track 2 peace initiative inspired and supported by Reverend Sun Myung Moon and Dr. Hak Ja-han Moon, which led to the unprecedented decision by North Korea to suspend its annual Hate America Month, observed each year from June 25th to July 27th. Dr. Ward has written articles related to the Korean situation for the Asia Pacific Journal, the Japan Focus, the Quarterly East Asia, and for E-International Relations in London. He's made presentations on Korean issues to students, academicians, UN officials, and US government officials as well. Well, Dr. Ward, I hope that you're going to touch on that meeting with North Korea. I'm very anxious to hear. I'm sure we are. Would like to hear a story about that. Welcome, Dr. Ward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lipowcan. It's really a pleasure for me to be here. And I'd like to thank both Professor Yi and Dr. Kim for very fine presentations. Actually, when I hear their presentations, I'm not really sure if my presentation is the right one to follow, but I will do my best here. I was asked to focus particularly on ideological issues. I hope I don't put anyone to sleep, but I would like to focus on that a little bit. How much time do I have, Mr. Chairman?
10 to 12 minutes.
Okay, so just feel free to give me a call and I will move very quickly and come to my conclusion. I want to respect everyone's time. So I'd like to begin by sharing my slides here. And my topic or my focus here is specifically on the question of Juche thought and its place in the context of Marxism. So the fundamental dimensions of Marxism, as per Marx and Engels, there are four parts to it. Alienation, Marxist political economy, dialectical materialism, and historical materialism. Lenin was able to effect fundamental transitions within the Marxist formula. And particularly, he kind of supplanted the typical Marxist political economy with his analysis of imperialism. And secondly, in terms of historical imperialism, he did two things. He maintained that it was possible for an agrarian state to immediately go into socialism. And also he maintained that it was not necessary to wait for the proletariat to emerge, the proletarian mentality to emerge. He maintained that an elite revolutionary group known as the Revolutionary Vanguard could be able to bring about a transition within the mindset of the proletariat, so such change, so that they could be brought to the level where they needed to be based upon the views of elders who would guide them. Mao Zedong, he brought a number of important, likewise, additives to Marxism-Leninism. First of all, he did remarkable things in the area of revolutionary war tactics. Secondly, his 5 principles of peaceful coexistence are absolutely essential for all of us to understand if we want to understand Chinese foreign policy. And by the way, those 5 principles were used very well by Deng Xiaoping during his period as the leader following the death of Mao Zedong. Dialectical and historical materialism was contributed to by Mao Zedong, as was the Cultural Revolution. And the Cultural Revolution, by the way, is like a reinforcement of Marx's labor theory of value and theory of surplus value. No time to go into it here, but if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to talk about it afterwards in questions and answers if you like. And also the concept of century of humiliation and Han-centric nationalism. This also stems, first of all, from Mao, but has been inherited even up to today with Xi Jinping. So that is that in some sense, those are the antecedents, if you will, to Juche thought. But how do we approach Juche thought? And I thought, well, there are 3 ways that one could be able to do it, or at least I could be able to do it. One way would be based upon my own experience that Ray referred to. I did have a chance to travel to North Korea in 1992 with a delegation headed by Congressman Richard Eichord. And this particular delegation was sponsored by Reverend Moon. He wanted to encourage a communication between American civil servants and public servants and the North Korean government. And that was what was behind this. The interesting thing that happened to me in the midst of this is that I ended up staying a week by myself in North Korea. And like all the people that were part of the delegation, I did have a chance to meet with Kim Il-sung. And I was also afforded an opportunity to speak on several occasions with Kim Yong-sun, who at that time was responsible for the whole effort to effect greater unity between North and South Korea. Anyways, I can also talk about that if you like. You visit Pyongyang, and I don't need to say too much because I've already heard from Dr. Kim about that. But one thing I do want to mention is Kumgang Mountain. When we traveled to Kumgang Mountain, there were some etchings of Kim Il-sung's sayings and words in the mountain. And someone said that actually, oh, those you can maybe see a little bit there. Some there it says Juche. So I can't see there. Juche is the first two there. There are these etchings from Kim Il-sung, from his writings, which one finds in the mountains at Kumgang Mountain. And at first I heard, oh, they're starting to take those down. But when I was there, no, they're adding even more. So this is a very prominent thing, the words and the teachings of Kim Il-sung. I had an opportunity while I was there to visit the Korean Revolution Museum. If you visit that museum, you discover about all of the atrocities that were committed by the Japanese during their occupation of the Koreas between 1905 and 1945. But I had a feeling, well, there's probably also a museum somewhere in Pyongyang which is specifically focused upon the injustices committed by Americans, and that is the Shincheon Museum of American Atrocities, which I wasn't shown. In trying to understand and respond to the DPRK mindset, we can look at the century of humiliation. This is the fundamental driving theme if we study the People's Republic of China nowadays. Whenever they run into, even when there was an earthquake and Chinese citizens began to complain about the government's failure to address things quickly, very, very soon there were people out there among the journalists telling basically kind of people that were in a position to kind of censor what people were saying, don't say anything critical about the government because you will just perpetuate the century of humiliation. Basically the period from 1839 to 1949. 1839 is the point at which the British attacked the Qing dynasty, and 1949 is the revolution when Mao came to power. And Mao is the one who refers to this as the century of humiliation. It's a fundamental theme. And likewise, the DPRK has its own century of isolation and humiliation. That begins with the Treaty of Portsmouth in 1905. And by the way, Japan's occupation of Korea, the United States had a role in that, to be clear. The United States did play a role kind of in exchange for the United States being able to occupy the Philippines. They allowed Japan to occupy Korea. And Tehran and Yalta, 1943 and 1945, led to the division of the Koreas along the 38th parallel, which in turn resulted in the Korean conflict and an armistice without any peace treaty. And the United States has never established formal diplomatic relations with the DPRK, as we know, up until today. B.R. Myers has written a text. It's called The Cleanest Race. I don't know if any of you have read the book. It's certainly worth reading. But he seems to want to reduce the whole phenomenon within the DPRK to racial issues. He goes back and somehow suggests that it was something that came because of the Japanese occupation and the Japanese adulation of the Yamato race, and that somehow this was developed likewise by Kim Il-sung. But my own feeling is there may be some dimension of truth in this, but I think it's a very simplistic explanation of what's going on in North Korea. And I say that from the viewpoint of a person who studied Marxism for a long period of time. There's no question within North Korea, there is a mythological and parental role of Kim Il-sung and the significance of him and of his lineage, the connection between Kim Il-sung and the mythical founder of Korea, Tangun. There is definitely this dimension. And likewise, even the notion that somehow Kim Jong-il was born at Baekdu Mountain and supposedly a glowing new star appeared in the horizon, and there was a double rainbow marking his birth. So there is a mythological dimension, if you will, within North Korea. I'll get back to that again, and specifically as it relates to the Kim family. But again, my question is, how do we approach Juche thought? And I want to explain how I'm doing it today. It could be based upon my past experience. It also could be based upon Kim Il-sung's autobiography, which, by the way, really strongly emphasizes his strong ties to China. I don't know if those ties were reduced through Kim Jong-il and through Kim Jong-un, but nevertheless, if you read his autobiography, China plays a central role in his life, and he spoke Chinese very fluently. Or we can look at official DPRK statements on Juche, and I've decided to do that. I'd like to devote the rest of my presentation specifically to that, and I'd like to focus on the text on the Juche idea, which was a treatise sent to the National Seminar on the Juche idea, which took place on the occasion of the 70th birthday of Kim Il-sung, March 31st, 1982. It's rumored that this was written by Kim Jong-il. Juche, as we know, it means subject and self-reliance. But if we look at the manuscript that I just referenced, it goes deeper into this, and it explains man holds a special position and plays a special role as master of the world because he is a social being with independence, creativity, and consciousness. These are kind of additives, if you will, to the Marxist lexicon, which come through the Juche idea. And if we read the opening portion of the Juche idea, we find that the text attributes specific importance to Marx and Engels and to the role which they played in the formulation of Marxism. And it also pays special attention to Lenin and the ways in which Lenin adapted Marxism in order to allow it to be able to become a revolutionary reality. So if we look at the Juche idea, what we will discover there is that it accepts the Marxist view of history. It also accepts the role of the labor class and the oppressed in terms of development through revolution. It also accepts and recognizes Lenin's crucial role in making Marxism a political reality through identifying imperialism rather than just capitalism as the basis for the emergence of socialism as a political reality. It also embraces Lenin's notion of the revolutionary vanguard. The difference between the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks is that the Mensheviks, these were the two competing forces at the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. The Mensheviks said, we have to wait until the day comes when it will be possible for the workers to have a proletarian mentality. And Lenin said, no, there's no time for that. I'm going to teach them that through the revolutionary vanguard, which he established under his leadership. Interestingly, Juche thought assigns no special role, at least by 1982, to Mao Zedong whatsoever, in spite of the special relationship that existed between Mao Zedong and China and Kim Il-sung. Finally, it assigns a special role to the Kim line and to their ability to understand the masses and bring about the realization of the stated ideal of becoming master of the world because he is a social being with independence, creativity, and consciousness. This is a very special piece, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in my conclusion here. The Marxist understanding of the human being says that human beings developed from apes because of their interface with tools. And that interface with tools led to, first of all, dexterity, the amazing development of the human hand. It led to language, and it also led to reason. All of this is outlined by Engels. However, within Juche thought, and by the way, also going to be mentioned, China's Cultural Revolution is a reinforcement of this notion that by interfacing with tools, it would become possible to create a much more developed civilization and society. It was one of the key dimensions, if you will, of the work of Mao Zedong. And actually, I did a portion of my doctoral thesis specifically on this topic. But the central pieces for humankind, for Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, and I think safely we can say for Kim Jong-un, is independence, creativity, and consciousness, not dexterity, language, and reason. Independence, creativity, and consciousness. And they make some very strong statements. Let me just read this. Taking a man-centered attitude towards the world means approaching the world from the viewpoint of the interests of man, the master of the world. I don't know what PETA would say about that. They would be quite surprised. The world should naturally be approached from this angle because man is the master of the world. Man understands and transforms the world in order to bring everything in the world to serve him. Man is the most precious being in the world, and his interests are more valuable than any others in the world. Everything in the world has its value only when it serves man. Therefore, approaching the world from the viewpoint of making it serve man better is an absolutely correct viewpoint and attitude to the world. Very strong statement. So the other point I would just make to conclude here is that the revolutionary vanguard is similar to the position of the great leader, but there is a special characteristic which is attributed to Kim Il-sung, to Kim Jong-il, to Kim Jong-un, and I think to the Kim line as a whole. And that is that they're not just teaching the masses how they can become proletarian, but they are learning from the masses. They know how to listen to the masses. So they play this amazing mediating role that is needed to protect the fatherland, sometimes also called the motherland, and that is needed in order to be able to protect North Korea and to further the revolution and to be able to see finally the unification of the fatherland. And for that reason, the mythological and parental role of Kim Il-sung and his lineage is very, very important. Shortly before his death, Kim Il-sung had this monument, which you'll see above. It looks like a pyramid to honor Dan-gun. And many felt that that particular monument was established in order to, first of all, honor Dan-gun, but also to kind of help the Korean people to see Kim Il-sung as a kind of a second Dan-gun, and furthermore, a special lineage that would serve as the basis to guide Korea into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Yes, we can definitely see a vast difference in ideology between North and South Korea. But of course, as you presented and the other two presenters, unless we really understand what these differences are, we are not going to be able to really create a strategy to bring peace and reconciliation to the Korean Peninsula. And one thing I'm glad both, or actually all three of you touched on, was the idea of personal relationships is a key. So personal relationship is really a key in all of this policy. At this time, we'd like to go to our question and answer session. The first question is directed for Dr. Yi. You emphasized interpersonal relationships as the form of witnessing. That might be permitted by faith-based people offering humanitarian aid in situations that are institutionally opposed to any mention of God. This seems like there would be some mutual or natural tensions involved. As people committed to a spiritual mission, how do you measure success?
Thank you for that great question. Who was what was the respondent's name? Mr.
Well, it was from the general audience.
Okay, that's fine. I think there are different ways to measure success, but I think for most faith-based workers, it's just making like a positive impact in the other, in each other's lives. And so, we saw the surfing video where you had one of the speakers, his name was Gabe Sigoy. He was actually born in Hawaii. So he mentioned how I'm from the first land to have surfing, Hawaii, and now I'm in North Korea, which is a lost country to experience surfing. So he thought, and then he shared a story with all the people there, children, elderly alike. And then it just said so he's making an impact, and the people. So it's a mutual impact. They're by going to North Korea, by sharing surfing, people are mutually impacting each other's lives, making it much more positive. And he doesn't, he never mentions God or Jesus, but when he's there and he's making a mutual positive impact, he's saying he's saying God's work. Okay.
Would any of the other panelists, Dr. Ward or Dr. Kim, care to comment on that? In other words, overcoming religious tensions that might exist. As Dr. Yee said, perhaps surfing was a way to break through. Maybe there's other ways that we could break down that barrier. Yes.
Sure. Also, one more thing is, and the second thing is showing sustained commitment, especially during the pandemic, during the sanctions. Many people have abandoned North Korea, but these faith-based organizations are committed. And then, for example, like Stephen and Joy Yoon, they started the Disabled Center in North Korea, and they still continue to send funds to North Korea. And they actually received a message from government officials, from the the government officials who work with the Disabled Center, that that they actually need extra funds this year because there's a food shortage in North Korea. So they need extra funds to feed the people, the children at the Disabled Center. And so this was communication that was just a couple of weeks ago. And they responded, and they're raising more money to send to these children in North Korea. And so by showing their love, their commitment, they're building trust with the people of North Korea, including the government officials. And so the government officials are willing to be very honest and candid and saying like, we need help. We're having a food shortage. We're struggling. Can you help us? And so by building that relationship of trust, by allowing the North Korean people, the government officials to be honest, we are moving to the future opening of North Korea.
Thank you, Dr. This is somewhat of a follow-up question to this for anyone who would like to answer. Regarding North Korea's animosity toward religion, is it the same intensity as that of Russia's Lenin or Mao? Is it more fervently atheistic, less, or the same? In other words, is there any daylight at all in the cracks for God to emerge in North Korea? For anyone? Dr. Ward?
I'll just say that when I was in North Korea on a second occasion, actually Mrs. Tomoko Duggan and also I was with me on that occasion. We did have the opportunity to visit the two Christian churches that existed at that time in the North, actually, and to go into them and to pray. Now, obviously, those churches, they were under some government duress. There's no question about it. But I think the main point is that basically within those places, communities of faith have to know their limitations. In his book Modern History, Paul Johnson talks about Lenin and says Lenin didn't fear the churches. Lenin feared the saints. And what that meant is Lenin feared those who dared to live by the words that they believed in. That was the thing that caused the biggest challenge. So Jesus says that people have to be as wise as serpents and as gentle as doves. I mean, I think that's the point, is that people have to know the way in which they navigate in situations like that. Basically, North Korea, they're very defensive. They feel that for so long, they have been demeaned, they have been dismissed, they have been marginalized. That's all a piece of it, So really, religious people who go there, they have to exercise a certain humility and a certain amount of prudence with what they do.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. This next question is directed to Dr. Kim. What is the current situation or attitude of the Republic of Korea students toward North Koreans and toward America?
Yeah, I think I don't know how much percentage, but many young people has a sympathy and toward North Korea, and has more like anti-USA kind of atmosphere among many young people. I have to see the statistics. That's what I know. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kim. I have another question directed not to anyone specifically, whoever would like to answer this. In 1985 in Switzerland, Dr. Morton Kaplan shared a conference that was titled the eventual collapse of communism, or the imminent, perhaps, collapse of communism, or the fall of the Soviet Union. This was based on Reverend Moon's insights into history. As absurd as it may seem at the time, a few short years later, it came to pass. Again, the collapse of North Korea has been predicted to happen soon for similar reasons. What are the thoughts, your thoughts, when the collapse comes swiftly? Will China intervene? How would you advise American leadership to conduct themselves?
Well, I'm happy to open to say a few things if you like. Yeah, I attended that conference in 1985 when Reverend Moon made that prediction, and it was phenomenal because everything that he said, it transpired exactly that way. A number of people have written on that particular conference, and they kind of recognize, oh, this was a really important conference, but what they don't understand is that Reverend Moon was the person behind it. And that was actually his insight into that particular situation. So I don't know, it's been almost 30 years since I was in North Korea, so I don't think I can make any prediction about where things stand right now based on my personal understanding or knowledge of the situation. But I do know one thing. And that is that the future, it's not enough just to think about the reunification of the Koreas, because the reunification of the Koreas under China, as China is right now, basically, if you know the Finlandization, if you know about what happened after in 1940 with Finland, when basically their foreign policy was completely taken over by the Soviet Union, and they were neutralized. I mean, I think that it's in no one's interest that there be a Finlandization of the Koreas. I think that would be extremely difficult and extremely unfortunate. One thing I think which is very tragic is the tragic breakdown of relations between Japan and Korea. And let me say this, I've spent I lived in France for many years, and I am always moved when I travel to Western France and to Strasbourg. And if you travel to Strasbourg in France, there is a statue, and it's a statue of a mother who's holding two sons, both dead, both killed in World War I. The one son fought for France, the other son fought for Germany. And in a non-judgmental way, at the bottom of the pedestal, it says died for the country. It doesn't say which country that they died for. The amazing thing about France is after World War II, there were two groups. There was the resistance and there were the collaborators. And somehow they found a way to reconcile resistance and collaborators. I don't think that's happened in Korea yet. And the consequence of that, because of that ability to resolve the problem between the resistance and the collaborators in France and Germany could come together finally. France became big enough to forgive Germany and to move on from that. And look at those two countries. You opened, Mr. Lipowcan, by talking about the relationship between Canada and the United States. The relationship between France and Germany now is almost like Canada and the United States. It's phenomenal what's happened, over the past 75 years, the way that they could be able to come. That hasn't happened yet in terms of Korea and Japan. And I believe that the UPF has a very important role to play in that, very crucial, central role in that. That's why in 1990, when the whole controversies began to come about post-World War II issues, in the case of Japan, at that time, Reverend Moon and Mother Moon established the Bridge of Peace to encourage reconciliation between Koreans and Japanese, encourage intermarriage between Koreans and Japanese. These are great things to make the relationship amongst these countries are important, because China is not going in a healthy way today. It's had healthy moments, but it's not going in a healthy way right now. It's being very controlled by the military and the party. There are people in China who want rule of law. America, Japan, Korea. If they're connected, they can encourage Japan to move towards rule of law. Otherwise, it's not hopeful. We definitely need that to happen. It's fundamental that somehow we have to. So reconciliation is very, very important. And I think UPF plays a central role in all this because of what's been done.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Professor Yi?
I wanted to add to Dr. Ward's excellent comment. I think the best way to prepare for the future is to understand what is going on now. I think many times our perception of North Korea is very outdated. The North Korea of Kim Jong-il and Kim Jong-un is very different from the North Korea of Kim Il-sung, especially the anti-religious angle. All three governments are very nationalistic. They strongly believe in the country, but they have different views about religion. Maybe in Kim Il-sung, Christianity was associated with America as a great imperialist, as an enemy. But by Kim Jong-il, views have changed. Kim Jong-il, in 2010, he helped to establish the first Christian university in North Korea, the Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, PUS. He allowed, the Christian surfing camp, and all these activities have been expanded under Kim Jong-un. And so Christians know that, foreign, faith-based workers understand that as long as they can demonstrate their love for the people of North Korea, their contribution to the people of North Korea, that, the government welcomes them, that they're very grateful. And I think that, by having a better understanding, we can lead to reconciliation between North Korea and the outside world, just as a better understanding can lead to reconciliation between, Korea and Japan. And so, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yi. Dr. Kim?
I just want to let everybody know is recently the book was published in Korea. That's novel, written by Kim Jin-myung. He's a bestseller novelist in Korea, and somehow he researched Father Moon, Mother Moon's foundation. He studied, and actually he came to America and found out all the efforts our founders made. And based on that, he wrote a book. The title of the book is Prediction. And the last page of the book, actually the Korea reunification can come 2025. So actually the other prediction books, we have some traditionally, the many people read some prediction book. Actually, it talks about 2025. So actually nobody knows what will happen in the near future. The things is very hard to predict. The opinions are very different, but I think that's why we have to prepare as best as possible. Our relationship with the other four major superpower countries. Just we have to make an effort to support. I believe the U.S. Lead all the efforts. I think that's what I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. We've been using the word about relationships a lot, building relationships and trust. This next question is directed towards Dr. Ward. What is the current position of Kim Jong-un or relationship of Kim Jong-un to China? And do you think Kim Jong-un wants to be free of China?
Let me say this. I think one of the the answer to that question lies in Juche. Basically, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, all of them, they want Juche. They want to be able to stand by themselves. That's a key point. They want to be an independent power. I think that's what I would just say is I don't think that Kim Jong-un under any condition is interested in having China take over the North. That would be a total humiliation, and it would be a total repudiation of his father and his grandfather.
Any other comments? This is somewhat of a follow-up question to that. We were talking about I'm sorry, Dr. Kim, go ahead.
I think it's very delicate, the relationship between even Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. And yeah, the Xi Jinping, he didn't like Kim Jong-un. He prefers like Chang Song-taek, the Kim Jong-un's the uncle, but Kim Jong-un killed, his uncle, and Xi Jinping didn't like that, because Chang Song-taek was the one who really inherited all the diplomatic kind of legacy between China and North Korea, and now China has to pay attention to U.S. policy. So China cannot freely, of course, the North Korea is a friend, but China cannot freely support North Korea. That's why Kim Jong-un feel kind of lack of love, maybe. So it's a very delicate situation. So I think we have to form this atmosphere. China can support more the unification of North and South Korea. And yeah, that's what I know.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. And somewhat of a follow-up question, we talked about Kim Jong-un's feelings or relationship towards China, but let's look at the other side of that equation to ask, is there any way China can permit a reunified Korea to exist based on democratic principles? Would they allow a democratic nation on their southern border? For anyone?
I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Dr. Kim, go ahead.
I think now even China, the tradition of Chinese leadership, of course, Xi Jinping is the kind of dictator, but the major decision has been made so far, like a Beidaihe meeting. Recently the meeting happened in Beidaihe, and all the famous leaders in China, they gathered together to make decisions. But Xi Jinping, he wants to continue his regime. So Xi Jinping kind of destroyed that meeting. So it's very hard to predict in China's situation. So it's very dangerous, I think, Xi Jinping's dictatorship. That's why we need a U.S. effort to try. This is the war of hegemony. So like between Soviet Union and the U.S. In the 80s. So I really want to support the U.S. based effort to win this war.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Dr. Ward, did you have another comment?
Oh, Professor Yi would like to say something. Why don't we?
Oh, Dr. Ward can go first.
I just want to mention one thing we have to be aware of in relationship to what Dr. Kim said. The economy of the United States was 12 times larger than the economy of the Soviet Union, 12 times larger. The economy of the People's Republic of China and the economy of the United States, right now they're equal, but it's only a matter of time before China will have the #1 economy in the world. So this whole question, a lot of it has to do with the present. This is a time which is a really important time in terms of everything that's going on that, because the influence of the United States will wane in that area as time goes by. I mean, it's going to take a long time. It's not easy to replace the United States, but the reality is that China is becoming stronger every day, and within the next few years, probably by 2035 at the latest, the expenditures on defense by the People's Republic of China, according to The Economist, will exceed those of the United States, and it just will continue to swing up after that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Yi.
Yes, as to your question, whether China will tolerate a democratic neighbor, it actually does, because China is right next to India, which is the largest democracy in the world. I think China and just communist thinkers in general, they respect strength. And so I think the best policy for the United States is to support, freedom everywhere, and also, to be welcome and opening to people who want freedom. And let's not forget, we have millions of Chinese who want to visit and study in the United States every year, including Eric Yong from China, who came to America, and then he started Zoom, right? Which is what we're using right now, right? He was a Chinese person who started Zoom, but he decided to stay in America because America has freedom. He created this great company, and I think and because of his freedom, America is much stronger because of his company. And so I'm actually not that worried about the rise of China. I think it's not China versus the United States. It's China, it's authoritarian states like China versus states who respect freedom, liberty. And so when you consider all the peoples who want liberty, who are liberal democracies, such as Japan, United States, Germany, India, Australia, it's much bigger than China. And so for me, I think the greater concern is that, I think overreaction is my greater concern, that we're going to close our borders to people like Eric Yong. We're going to deny freedom to the Chinese people. I think that's the overreaction. And so I think what we want to do is we want to engage the people of China, offer freedom to the people of China, and encourage the people of China to liberalize their own country. We want to say that, we America, we're your friends, not your enemies. And if you want freedom, we will help you. We always want to have an open hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yi. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I have one final question for Dr. Ward, and after your response, Dr. Ward, if you can give your concluding remarks, and then perhaps Dr. Kim, and then Professor Yi. The question is, Dr. Ward, earlier you had mentioned about rule of law. Can you define that a little bit further?
Yes, there are two things. There's law and there's rule of law. Basically, if you look at the Constitution of Saddam Hussein, I invite you. You can go, Google it on the web. You can do it. Look at the Constitution under the rule of Saddam Hussein. It was a wonderful constitution. There was freedom of speech. There was freedom of assembly. There was freedom of religion. Everything was wonderful on paper, but there was no rule of law. And what that means is that basically the law was not implemented. It wasn't respected. Here in the United States, in Japan, in South Korea, we respect there are lots of discrepancies. I'm not naive about that, but we are expected to uphold the rule of law. That means what's written in the law, we are meant to act based upon that. And normally, if you don't, you get in trouble. Okay, but there are plenty of countries in the world, which ignore rule of law, and that's why we need to have rule of law. Not just wonderful laws guaranteeing democracy, but the means to enforce those things. Otherwise, we will get nowhere. Anyway, this is an enormous topic which we've touched upon today. I really want to thank Professor Yi and Dr. Kim. You both provided very helpful and exciting insights. Professor Yi, I had not heard about these recent Christian initiatives that you spoke about. I really appreciated learning about that. I want to also thank Dr. Kim. Dr. Kim has really been able to contextualize the work of UPF vis-a-vis the Koreas. And I think it's really, really important. That was a wake-up call for all of us, Dr. Kim. I really thank you for the way in which you presented things. And I'm really grateful that UPS is taking so seriously this theme of Korean reunification. It's a fundamental issue in our world, and through its resolution, the world will be a better place. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Dr. Kim, any concluding remarks?
Yeah, when I think about North Korea, as I mentioned in my presentation, actually the Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un, they are beyond the constitution. So we cannot ignore this ideology issue, that we have to deal with it. even after unification, I said, when Father Moon visited North Korea in the Mansday Assembly Hall, there was some argument going on, and Father Moon talked about the Charles Darwin's theology, but before that, where these man and woman come from. Father talked about ideology. So we don't hate the communist people, but ideology is wrong. That's why we have to deal with it and resolve that issue with love. I think that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Professor Yi?
I just want to say that, again, this is a very important topic, but I want to emphasize that building liberty is very difficult, as we see in Afghanistan. Liberty is very fragile. It takes years and years of hard work and investment, sacrifice to build a liberal democracy. And then, but I want Americans to, be engaged. America has to take the lead. And then I hope that America will keep its faith, believe in liberty, and promote liberty in Korea and everywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yi. Yes, one takeaway that I've had today, I think, is just that I've learned from all three of you is just the necessity of educating ourselves, the world, of the circumstances, and the idea of personal relationships. That was a good takeaway for me today. So perhaps we can expound on this further, which leads me into tomorrow. We have the International Leadership Conference is going on all week. So tomorrow we'll be meeting. That's Wednesday, August 18th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time for session 3. And the title of session 3 is titled Asian Linchpin, Addressing Technical, Societal, and Political Challenges of the Japan-Korea Undersea Tunnel. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. 네, 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.